Chapter 1. The love of my boyfriend's life was his stepsister. He never chose between her and me, because in his heart, his sister always came first. 7 years of my life and our relationship meant nothing when his sister so much as crooked her finger. Every time I got jealous, he would ask me with disgust, "She's just my sister. Why is your mind so filthy? Why are you making such a big deal over a kid?" A kid, please. I'd never seen a 22-year-old kid who deliberately targeted her brother's girlfriend, who put sleeping pills in my water, pretended to accidentally push me down the stairs, and intentionally broke her brother's phone when I was seriously ill in the hospital so he wouldn't get the news. In his eyes, she was a sweet, gentle sister. To me, she was a malicious, ruthless, two-faced snake. Since my boyfriend unconditionally believed his saintly stepsister, it was time for me to leave. I wish you two the very best, a scumbag and a schemer, a match made in heaven. Vicky, are you really willing to go through with the arranged marriage? On the other end of the line, my mother's voice was so gentle it made me want to cry. Don't force yourself. I can talk to your father. Your happiness is what's most important. I took a deep breath and forced a calm smile. I've made up my mind, Mom. I'll wrap things up at the company over the next couple of weeks, then I'll book a flight to New Zealand to meet him. After hanging up, I was about to head back to the private room. Suddenly, a delicate laugh came from behind me. "Victoria, why aren't you going back in for a drink? Is it because it's my birthday party and my brother Graham has been neglecting you?" The girl in front of me had a delicate, oval face with gentle makeup. Her cute baby doll dress made her look even more charming and innocent. This was Rebecca Sterling, my boyfriend Graham Grant's stepsister. In front of Graham, she was the cute, gentle, and understanding sister he cherished and protected. "Don't worry, Victoria. If Graham ignores you, I'll teach him a lesson for you," she said, putting on a show of empathy. I shook my head coldly. "Graham isn't here. Who are you performing this sisterly love act for?" With that, I turned to leave. But Rebecca suddenly grabbed my arm, yanked the glass of red wine from my hand, and splashed it all over herself before throwing herself to the ground. "Ah, Victoria, what are you doing? Victoria, what do you think you're doing?" Almost simultaneously, a sharp male voice cut through the air, drawing closer. Graham rushed to Rebecca's side, helped her up, and draped his jacket over her shoulders. He glared at me with disgust, as if I weren't his girlfriend of 7 years, but his mortal enemy. "Victoria, how many times do I have to explain this to you? Becca is my sister. Do you have to be so jealous and hostile toward her?" He didn't even give me a chance to explain. After viciously scolding me, he helped Rebecca leave. I let out a self-deprecating laugh, marveling at my past naivety and foolishness. Would I have been so sensitive if Graham had given me any sense of security? On our anniversary, he gave me a ring, but the size was too small. It only fit on my pinky finger. I loved that ring and always thought he had chosen it carefully for me. Later, I found out it was a ring his sister didn't want. The clothes he bought for me never fit because he only remembered his sister's size. When I was sick in the hospital with no one to care for me, he couldn't even be bothered to call, rushing off instead to celebrate his sister's birthday. His social media feed was filled with pictures of his sister, without a single photo of me. In his heart, his sister was always more important than I was. This demeaning relationship should have ended long ago. I walked silently to the parking lot, ready to leave. But around a corner, I saw Rebecca wrapped in Graham's arms. They were pressed so closely together, looking less like brother and sister and more like a deeply attached couple who couldn't bear to be parted. Rebecca's eyes were filled with tears as she asked in a choked voice, "Brother, after you and Victoria get married, will you stop loving me?" "Of course not. You've been my sister for 20 years. In my heart, no one is more important than you," Graham said, his eyes soft with a tenderness I had never experienced. Rebecca pouted playfully. "If Victoria and I get into a fight, will you help her or me?" Graham smiled and stroked her hair. "You, of course. You'll always be the only one for me. If I weren't your sister, maybe?" Hearing Rebecca's words, my scalp tingled. A chill shot through my entire body, so I wasn't wrong. Rebecca's feelings for Graham were never just sisterly affection, it was romantic love. Rebecca's cheeks flushed as she said coquettishly, "We're not related by blood anyway, brother. I really like you, you know?" Just then, Rebecca stood on her tiptoes and kissed Graham on the lips. They clung to each other passionately, as if at that moment they were the only two people in the world. A cold numbness washed over me. Tears streamed down my face, and I was plunged into despair. A heavy stone seemed to be crushing my chest, making it hard to breathe. I clutched my chest and fled in a panic. Once I got home, I started packing my bags, desperate to escape the home I had once shared with Graham. Just then the door was pushed open. Graham, reeking of alcohol, strode in. When he saw me packing, his face darkened. "Victoria, what are you throwing a fit about now?" he demanded. I couldn't be bothered to speak to such a disgusting person and continued packing in silence. Graham's anger flared. He grabbed my wrist and demanded sharply, "I'm talking to you, why aren't you answering?" "Let go of me," I wrenched my hand away, shouting in disgust, "Don't touch me, you make me sick." Sick, the word seemed to provoke him. Chapter 2. He frowned at me and asked coldly, "Are you still jealous of my sister?" "Victoria, how can your mind be so filthy? You're jealous of my own sister. Are you going to be jealous of my mother next?" I was stunned. I stared at him in disbelief, shocked that he would say such a thing just to defend Rebecca. So, it was never me that Graham cared about. "Graham, Rebecca isn't your blood sister. Since you like her, go after her, who cares what society thinks? If you like her, why are you still bothering me? What did I do wrong to become a pawn in your little game?" As I screamed hysterically, a flicker of panic crossed Graham's eyes. He asked uneasily, Did you see something?" I laughed coldly. "What are you getting nervous? Graham, if you had the guts to do it, why don't you have the guts to admit it?" A hint of anxiety flashed in Graham's eyes. He explained awkwardly, "You've misunderstood, Vicky. I've always seen Becca as my sister. I've never had any improper thoughts about her." A wave of nausea washed over me. I covered my mouth in pain and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Graham panicked instantly. He cautiously approached me, gently wiped my mouth, and asked, "What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Let me take you to the hospital." I coldly pushed his hand away. No need. I had already decided to leave anyway. How Graham and his not-so-sisterly sister behaved from now on had nothing to do with me. But I didn't know if Graham was worried I'd expose his dirty secret, or if he had already decided to have it both ways. He grabbed my hand, his tone suddenly softening. "I'm sorry, Vicky. Actually, I've always known that Becca, her feelings for me, but I can promise you I have always treated Becca as a sister, and I've never crossed any lines. Our engagement party is in a week. How about I take you to pick out a dress?" Graham's eyes were gentle, as if he truly only loved me, but through his eyes I could see the lie. In that moment, I suddenly changed my mind. I had wasted so many years of my youth on him. Why should I leave quietly after he cheated, letting him and his sister live happily ever after? That wasn't fair to me at all. I was going to expose him and his sister to everyone, and before I left, I would make sure everyone knew just how disgusting and ugly the things this scumbag had done, where I quietly finished packing my things and hid the suitcase in the closet. I didn't finish until 3:30 in the morning, finally collapsing onto the bed to rest. However, at 6:30 in the morning, Graham suddenly called me. "Vicky, I ordered you takeout. It's your favorite chestnut pastry. Make sure you eat it. I have something urgent at the company today, so I can't go with you to pick out a dress. Let's go together when I'm done, okay?" Graham's voice was filled with affection. Only I knew that he didn't have urgent business at the company. He was tied up with his good sister. I understood when he was busy during the company's IPO phase, but now the company was stable and running smoothly. His colleagues had already gone home, but he, the boss, was suddenly working overtime. Only the old, foolishly naive Victoria would have been so blatantly deceived by him, believing his lies. The new me didn't care about anything he said. "Fine, you go ahead and work, I don't mind." I said it casually, but perhaps he detected the faint sadness in my tone. Graham suddenly started comforting me gently. "Vicky, Becca is still a child. Be the bigger person and don't be angry with her. I'll apologize to you on her behalf, okay?" "Okay," I answered faintly, not saying anything more. But Graham carefully asked again, "By the way, Vicky, the $10 million my mother gave you for our engagement, is it still in the account?" "Yes, I haven't touched it. You can use it if you need it." After saying that, I hung up the phone. After washing up and changing, I threw away everything I had ever bought for Graham. When love is gone, it's gone. Keeping these things around was just an eyesore. At noon, I made myself a simple bowl of noodles. As I was eating, a trending news notification popped up on my phone. Mr. Graham Grant of Grant Corp. purchases a multi-million-dollar diamond necklace, love of a lifetime, at a high-end auction as an engagement gift for his fiancée, symbolizing his love for one person only. The headline was glaring and eye-catching. I clicked on the news link. The person sitting next to Graham at the auction wasn't me at all. It was his good sister, Rebecca Sterling. Rebecca was holding the diamond necklace, looking ecstatic. Everyone thought it was a brother taking his sister to buy an engagement gift for his future sister-in-law. Only I knew that this diamond necklace was never meant for me. Chapter 3. No wonder he called me this morning to ask if I had touched the engagement money. It turned out he planned to use that money to buy a diamond necklace to please his dear sister. I couldn't be bothered with him. After all, the money was a gift from him and his mother, so it was his right to take it back. It was his money. He could spend it on whomever he wanted. From now on, I would never question him again. It had been almost 3 days since Graham said he had to work late and left. He hadn't come back. I enjoyed the peace and quiet and began to gather all the evidence of Graham and Rebecca's overly intimate private relationship. First, I went to the bank and got his transaction records, saving all the transfers made to Rebecca. Then I went through Rebecca's social media, where she flaunted the gifts Graham gave her and took screenshots of everything. After that, I hired a private investigator to tail Graham. Anytime Graham and Rebecca met, there would be evidence then. I met up with my friends for a proper farewell gathering. When my best friend, Wendy Davis, saw me, she gave me a tight, sympathetic hug. She sighed and said, "Vicky, I saw the news online. Graham isn't just being oblivious, he's doing this on purpose to hurt you. Anyone can see that he's way too involved with his stepsister, yet he completely ignores your feelings and has no intention of creating distance, does he?" I smiled faintly, not letting it bother me. "Wendy, you're my best friend, so I don't want to hide this from you. I've agreed to my mother's arrangement. In 2 weeks, I'm moving to New Zealand for a marriage and a new life." "Are you serious?" Wendy's face lit up when she heard I was leaving. She gently took my hand and encouraged me. "Vicky, honestly, I've wanted you to leave that scumbag for a long time. Having a vixen of a sister like that around him is just infuriating. But now that you're really leaving, I'm going to miss you so much." I smiled gently and squeezed Wendy's hand. "Wendy, as long as we're alive, we'll see each other again. I can come back to visit you often, and you can come visit me abroad. We won't lose touch." I cherished my friendship with Wendy. She was my only true friend in the unfamiliar city of Seaview. In the past, whenever I was sick with a cold, the person who should have been there for me wasn't Graham, but her. She would patiently take care of me, worrying if I was hungry or cold. She remembered all my preferences, what I was allergic to, and what I didn't like to eat. Sometimes I even wondered why I was in a relationship at all. When I needed my boyfriend, Graham, he was never there. He was less reliable than my friend, who lived an hour and a half's drive away. Graham's office was only 5 minutes from our home, yet he wouldn't even come back to check on me. Instead, a single pout from his dear sister was enough to call him away. Every time I thought about it, I felt like a ridiculous clown. What made me feel even more ridiculous was a new post from Rebecca. It was a 9-photo grid, and in every picture, there was the figure of a man in a light blue shirt. Others might not know who it was, but I recognized him at a glance. It was Graham. I had personally sewn the buttons on that shirt. I couldn't be mistaken. So, while Graham was claiming to be on a business trip, working hard, and being incredibly busy, he was actually on vacation with his dear sister, Rebecca, and in the center photo, a selfie of Rebecca, she was blatantly wearing the multi-million-dollar diamond necklace that Graham had bought at the auction even when he was at his busiest. Graham could find time to go on a trip with Rebecca. But choosing a wedding dress, which would only take half a day, was something he couldn't be bothered to do with me. His feelings for me were long gone, completely replaced by Rebecca. Was there any reason to continue such a twisted relationship? Seeing the desolate look in my eyes, Wendy comforted me with concern. "Vicky, if you're upset, just let it all out. A scumbag like him deserves to be cursed out. Just yell at him, get it off your chest, and you'll feel better. A person like him isn't worth your sadness. He'll find out what kind of person Rebecca really is sooner or later." When he does, he'll definitely regret everything he's done today. I didn't answer, just gazed quietly out the window. After a moment, I looked at Wendy gently. Wendy, honestly, I stopped caring a long time ago. Chapter 4. He is who he is, and I am who I am. His choices have nothing to do with me anymore, and I won't be affected by his actions. This relationship needs to end, but I want to ask you for a favor. Wendy patted the back of my hand, her expression resolute. What's our relationship? You don't need to use the word ask. Don't worry, whatever it is, as long as I can do it, I'll do everything in my power to help. I looked at Wendy with gratitude, my heart touched. I had a failed relationship, but my friends were truly there for me. I was about to leave this place of heartbreak, and the only thing I couldn't bear to leave behind was my good friend. Just then, my phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID. The familiar name, Graham, no longer stirred any emotion in my heart. What's wrong? I asked calmly after answering. Didn't you wash my ties? Why can't I find a clean one? His slightly accusatory tone made it seem as though the person on the other end of the line wasn't the love of his life, but just a nanny. For some reason, even through the phone, I could almost smell a scent of decay and rot. It was as if the person on the other end had suddenly gone bad, starting to stink. I retorted coldly, "Don't you have hands? If you can't find one, can't you look? If you can't find one, can't you wash one yourself? Why do you have to rely on me for everything? Why don't you go ask your dear sister?" My barrage of rebukes left Graham somewhat stunned. He asked in surprise, "Vicky, what's gotten into you? You've never spoken to me like this before." Yes, that was before. The old Victoria was a lovesick fool, utterly blinded by love. No matter what Graham said, no matter what he asked me to do, I would obediently follow his instructions, afraid of doing anything that might displease him or make him unhappy. In my eyes back then, Graham was my everything. I couldn't bring myself to say anything against him. I took care of his daily life like a nanny, handling every little detail. But now I had seen through him. He had given the love he should have given me to another woman, and in his eyes, I seemed to be no different from a nanny on the other end of the phone. Graham tentatively asked, "Vicky, you're not still angry with me about the birthday thing, are you?" "No," I replied coldly, not wanting to waste any more words on him. Graham's mind raced. He ventured again, then, "Is it because of Becca's social media post?" Please don't misunderstand. I was really on a business trip. Becca and her friends happened to be traveling in the same city, so I just hung out with her for a bit. His explanation was weak and unconvincing. I couldn't be bothered to listen anymore and cut him off flatly. "That's enough. From now on, you don't need to explain your affairs to me in such detail. I'm not in the mood to listen." With that, I hung up. Wendy gave me a thumbs up. "Girl, you should have done that a long time ago." To hell with scumbags. Graham came home at 11 that night. I was already asleep, and annoyed by the noise he was making, I simply pulled the covers over my head. Before, whenever Graham came home, I would have a hot meal ready and waiting for him. But now, all of that was gone. When Graham came home to an empty house and a cold dining table, he felt a pang of unease. The refrigerator was nearly empty. Starving, Graham found a carton of milk, heated it up, and just as he was drinking it, the bedroom door opened. I walked out with a cold expression. "Can you keep it down? You woke me up and it's really annoying." My attitude was terrible. After complaining, I went straight to the bathroom. Graham stared blankly at my angry form, then quickly walked over and grabbed my hand. "Vicky, what's been wrong with you lately? Why have you changed so much? It's like you became a different person overnight." I looked at Graham calmly, finding the situation utterly ridiculous. A different person? More likely, I had changed from being his nanny back to being myself, and he wasn't used to it. I couldn't be bothered to explain anything to Graham. I pulled my hand back and said impatiently, "Let go of me, I need to rest." Back in the room, I locked the door. A wall now completely separated me from Graham. The next morning, I made a simple breakfast for myself, a fried egg and a glass of hot milk. Graham emerged from the guest room and, seeing only one breakfast on the table, asked, "Vicky, where's my breakfast?" Chapter 5. I shook my head. "There isn't enough food in the fridge. Go eat with Becca." In the past, I would often wake up early to make breakfast for Graham, but he almost never ate with me. He would always go to eat with Rebecca. His excuse was that his sister had a sensitive stomach and often skipped breakfast, so he was worried about her health. He forgot that I had woken up at 6 in the morning, specifically to make that food for him. Now that I couldn't be bothered to do these things anymore, he was questioning me. It was laughable, and it made all my past efforts feel like they had been completely wasted on him. Victoria, why are you being so strange? Graham seemed unable to tolerate my behavior any longer. He frowned and demanded, "Don't tell me you're still mad about the birthday party and are throwing a tantrum." I smiled faintly, my gaze on Graham perfectly calm. "I'm not mad at you, Graham. This is how you used to treat me. How come when I treat you the same way, you're the one who can't handle it?" My words struck Graham like a bolt of lightning. He stared at me in shock for a long time, as if finally realizing something was wrong. He quickly sat down next to me, gently took my hand, and began to apologize sweetly. "Vicky, I'm sorry. I've had too much to deal with at the company lately, and I've been so busy with overtime that I've neglected you. But don't worry, my work is almost caught up. As soon as you finish breakfast, I'll take you to choose a wedding dress, okay?" I silently pulled my hand away. "Whatever you want," I said flatly. After quickly finishing my breakfast, I prepared to go out to pick up my visa. Graham stood at the door, a smile in his eyes, and waved at me. "Vicky, let's go. We're going to try on wedding dresses." The words had barely left his mouth when his phone rang urgently. I let out a cold laugh. I didn't need to guess. The only person who would call him like that was Rebecca. I didn't pay any attention to what Graham had just said. I knew that whenever Graham and I tried to do something alone, Rebecca would always come up with some excuse to snatch him away from me. "Okay, don't worry, Becca. Brother is on his way to you right now." After hanging up, Graham looked at me apologetically and explained. Becca cut her hand. "I have to go over there right away. Vicky, let's try on wedding dresses tomorrow. Don't worry, as soon as I'm done, I'll spend quality time with you." The words were so ridiculous they left me speechless. Rebecca cut her hand. Couldn't she go to a clinic and get it bandaged herself? Did she really need to wait for Graham to come? Right. To her, Graham was a magic cure-all. The moment she saw him, all her ailments would vanish. I couldn't be bothered to fight with her over a scumbag. If she wanted him that badly, she could have him. Seeing me standing there, completely unmoved, Graham seemed to realize something. In all the years we had been together, he had never been this anxious over any injury I had. He would either tell me to bandage it myself or scold me for being so careless. Perhaps in his eyes, I was just a clumsy person who didn't know how to take care of herself. What woman doesn't want to feel protected? Who doesn't want to be treated with affection? Graham knew all of this. But I was a woman who didn't fight, didn't complain, and didn't make a fuss. I was good at reading his moods and didn't want to make him angry. So, over time, he habitually ignored me. Meanwhile, Rebecca was a girl who knew how to act cute and loved to be protected. So every time Rebecca needed something, Graham would appear by her side at the first opportunity to protect and cherish her. I now understood that only the crying child gets the candy. Graham walked over to me, gave me a gentle hug, and said in an exceptionally soft voice, "Vicky, I know you're a strong girl. Don't worry, I'll be back for you as soon as I'm done." I didn't say a word, just silently watched his departing back before turning around and going back to my room to attend to my own business. In the afternoon, Graham returned by car. With him was his sweet, pouting sister, Rebecca. As soon as they entered, Rebecca excitedly called my name. "Victoria, come down, quickly look what I brought for you," annoyed by the noise. I pushed open my door and came downstairs to see Rebecca excitedly swinging a bag in her hand, beaming at me. "Victoria, my brother and I went to pick out a wedding dress for you. Come down and try it on." I froze, instinctively looking at Graham. "You two picked out a wedding dress for me?" I asked in disbelief. Chapter 6. That's right, Rebecca was a master at playing the innocent victim. She smiled sweetly, waving the dress bag at me, and said gently, "My brother said I have good taste, and since we were passing by a bridal shop, we went in to try some on. You're not mad at me for taking the liberty, are you, sis? I was just trying to help my brother. He's so busy with work, we shouldn't waste his time on things like this." Rebecca's words made me laugh. Me and Graham getting married, in her words, had turned into me wasting Graham's time. If getting married meant there wasn't even time to try on a wedding dress, then why get married at all? Graham didn't notice the change in my expression at all. He walked over to me with a smile, handed me the dress bag, and said in a very gentle tone, "Here, Vicky. Becca picked this out for you herself. She said you'll look beautiful in it." I numbly took the dress and glanced at the bag next to Rebecca. "What's that?" I asked coldly. Rebecca replied with a wide smile, "It's the bridesmaid dress." "Bridesmaid dress?" I frowned at her and questioned coldly, "When did I say you were going to be my bridesmaid?" Rebecca seemed taken aback that I would confront her so bluntly in front of Graham. Her eyes welled up with tears as she stared at me, her voice trembling. "Victoria, I thought you would definitely ask me to be your bridesmaid. After all, I'm his sister. So I took the liberty of choosing a bridesmaid dress, wanting to witness your happiness. If you don't like me, then never mind. I don't want to cause a fight between you two." As she spoke, Rebecca made a show of picking up the bridesmaid dress to leave. Seeing this, Graham immediately became anxious. He quickly stepped in front of Rebecca and called out to me urgently, "Vicky, what are you doing?" Becca meant well, what does it matter who the bridesmaid is? Why can't it be my sister? I pointed a cold finger at the bridesmaid dress and retorted with a sneer. She chose a bright red bridesmaid dress. Graham, whose wedding is this, yours and mine, or yours and hers? How can you let her upstage me like this? Graham's face changed. He pointed at me, shocked, and roared, "What nonsense are you talking about?" Rebecca covered her mouth in feigned surprise. "Victoria, what are you talking about? He's my brother. How could you have such a filthy thought?" His words made me laugh. I nodded sarcastically. "Right, I'm the one with the filthy mind. I'm overthinking things. Take your dress and get out. I didn't want to deal with this scumbag and his trashy companion anymore." I threw the wedding dress out the door and locked it. No matter how many times Graham called me, I had no intention of responding. Tired of trying to coax me and not wanting to lose face in front of his sister, Graham finally snapped coldly, "Fine, if you won't open the door, then stay behind it forever. Becca, let's go. I can't let your future sister-in-law bully you before she even joins the family." His words, meant to be a heroic defense of his sister, echoed in my ears. I sneered, lamenting how blind I had been all these years to have fallen for such a sister-obsessed man. After they left, I immediately began organizing the information the private investigator had sent me. I hadn't realized the extent of it until I looked. It was shocking. Over the years, Graham had transferred nearly $1 million to Rebecca, and indescribable sadness washed over me. When I had mentioned that my commute to work was long and I wanted to buy a car, Graham refused. He said the traffic was often bad and he worried about me driving alone every day, so he insisted I not buy one. I was such a fool back then to actually believe him. Little did I know that all the savings we had painstakingly accumulated over the years had been secretly transferred by him to Rebecca. I suddenly burst out laughing. Laughing at how my years of emotional investment had been wasted. Laughing at how I had been kept in the dark, played like a fool. I compiled all the evidence onto a USB drive and sent it to Wendy. Then I gathered all my luggage and headed straight for the airport without a second thought. On the way to the airport, I received a call from Graham. He sounded frantic. "Vicky, Rebecca's painting from 3 years ago, Love's Silhouette, has been exposed as a plagiarism of your graduation project. Can you post on Twitter to help clarify things?" Hearing the panic in his voice, I found it utterly absurd. Graham didn't care if I was angry. He wasn't calling to apologize or console me, but to ask for my help in getting his precious Rebecca out of trouble. I got it. I hung up coldly and opened Twitter. It was already flooded with posts about Rebecca's plagiarism. That's right, I was the one who leaked it. Rebecca and I were both art students, except I was a genius painter, while she was just an ordinary, mediocre student who went to college just to get a degree. 3 years ago, she came to me, asking if she could modify my graduation project and submit it as her own for a competition. If she won, she would get 5 academic credits. Otherwise, she would have to repeat the year. At the time, I thought Rebecca was being sincere, treating me like a real sister-in-law, so I agreed without hesitation. I never expected the painting to become a dark horse, winning award after award and ultimately taking first place nationwide. From then on, that painting opened up Rebecca's future. Countless galleries invited her to exhibit her work. After graduation, she was highly sought after by various design industries, becoming a hot new design star. All of that should have been mine. She stole my future, and she stole my love. With a cold expression, I took out my phone, opened Twitter and reposted the news of her plagiarism, tagging her name and adding a line of text. She did indeed plagiarize my work. It was a copy of my graduation project, Love's Cage. After posting the message, I grabbed my suitcase and walked into the airport without looking back. Just then, Graham called me again. He asked frantically, "Vicky, what do you mean by that repost?" "I asked you to help clarify. Why did you say Becca plagiarized your work?" "Becca is your sister. How could you be so heartless and watch her get attacked by everyone?" Graham's accusations were laughable. "My sister. Sorry, I was born an only child. I don't have a sister." I didn't want to waste any more words on him. I left him with a "we're breaking up," blocked all his contact information, and proceeded to board the plane. It was all over. Graham, this is the price you pay for betraying me. Chapter 7. Sometime later, at an airport in New Zealand, I took my suitcase from Ethan Hawthorne and gave him a gentle smile. "All right, you don't have to see me off any further. I'll be back right after the wedding. Don't worry about me." Ethan wrapped me in a gentle hug and placed a soft kiss on my lips. "I'll be waiting for you to come back, wifey." I looked back every few steps, waving to Ethan before turning and walking through the boarding gate. I hadn't been back to Seaview City for a while, but it was still the same as before. Not much had changed. The only thing that had changed was my state of mind. The despair I felt when I chose to leave was matched only by the happiness I felt now. Ethan was a college admirer who had quietly loved me for years. After I chose to marry him, he spoiled me rotten, indulging my every whim and making me feel truly protected and cherished. The love I had lost with Graham was completely replenished by Ethan. If it weren't for my good friend Wendy's wedding, I wouldn't have made a special trip back to this place of painful memories. After getting off the plane, I spotted Wendy immediately. The two best friends hadn't seen each other in a long time and hugged each other excitedly. "Vicky, I missed you so much, you're finally back." Wendy was so emotional she was on the verge of tears. She held my hand and said with a choked voice, "You've gotten even more beautiful. You must be very happy living abroad." I smiled and nodded. "Yes, he's very good to me." "Then I can rest easy." Wendy let out a sigh of relief. As we walked out of the airport, she told me what had happened after I left. After Rebecca's plagiarism was exposed, my confirmation was the final nail in the coffin. She was fired from her job, and her reputation plummeted to worthlessness. Some people even doxed her, sending her fake money for the dead and threatening her. Following my instructions, Wendy uploaded all the information from the USB drive to the internet using my account, exposing the undercurrents between him and his sister. Instantly, the internet was flooded with scandals about Rebecca and Graham, with discussion threads reaching over 3 million comments. "Oh my God, the CEO of Grant Corp, Graham Grant, neglected his girlfriend for a stepsister he's not even related to. Is his sister crazy? She's in love with her own brother and secretly kisses him. My God, what kind of messed up, worldview-shattering thing is this? If I were Victoria, I'd run away from this pair of scumbags as fast as I could. They're absolutely disgusting." She definitely already left. I heard a while ago that their engagement party was supposed to be today, but there's been no news at all. They must have broken up. My God, I just saw photos of Graham taking his sister to pick out a wedding dress a while ago. He buys a dress without his fiancée, but takes his sister instead. What kind of logic is that? That's not even the most disgusting part. The most disgusting part is that his sister chose a bright red bridesmaid dress for herself. Anyone who didn't know better would think he was marrying his sister. Chapter 8. I've never seen such a shameless person. This is just playing dumb on purpose, isn't it? Poor Victoria, all those years of love and effort completely wasted. I glanced at the screenshots on Wendy's phone and could only find it amusing. "So what happened to Graham in the end?" Wendy shook her head and sighed. "Him. After he found out you left, he went crazy looking for you everywhere. And he cut off all contact with Rebecca." "What?" Wendy's words took me by surprise. Didn't Graham not care about me at all, only his precious sister? Why would he fall out with his dear sister over me? For a moment, I couldn't understand what Graham was trying to do. While I stood there stunned, a familiar voice called out my name, trembling. "Vicky! Vicky!" "It really is you," startled. I followed the voice and looked up. I immediately saw Graham, his eyes filled with delight, striding towards me. 2 years had passed, and he looked much more worn and haggard than before. His hair was messy as if it hadn't been properly cared for in a long time, and his chin was covered in stubble. He looked completely dejected. He rushed over excitedly, reaching out to pull me into his arms. I instinctively took a few steps back, hiding behind Wendy, and stared at him with a frown. "What do you want?" I demanded coldly. Graham's hands froze in midair. He stared at me in disbelief, his voice trembling as he asked, What's wrong, Vicky? "It's me, Graham, your boyfriend, Graham. Don't you recognize me? Where have you been all these years?" I've been looking for you. Seeing his red-rimmed eyes and the joyous expression of someone who has found what they've lost, I found it utterly ridiculous. I shook my head faintly, my expression blank. "Graham, I told you when I left that we were breaking up. Do you have such a bad memory?" "Breaking up?" Disbelief flickered in Graham's eyes. He took a step forward, about to grab my hand. "When did I agree to break up with you, Vicky? Stop joking with me, okay?" "Let go of me," my eyes filled with disgust. I shook off Graham's hand and snapped, "I'm not joking with you, Graham. Face reality. We've already broken up." Watching the woman who once loved him most now treat him with such coldness, distance, and even disgust, Graham's heart sank to the bottom, deeply stung. He remembered how decisively I had left him. I hadn't even left him a single clue. He didn't even know where to look for me. Graham finally realized that he had lost the most important person in his life, the person who loved him most. For the past 2 years, he had been living alone in the small home they once shared, countless times recalling my kindness, my care, and my concern for him. He always fantasized that one day I would suddenly push open the door, throw myself into his arms, and say that I missed him. But in all those days and nights, he had only seen me in his dreams. A sense of suffocation and despair enveloped Graham. He forced a smile and looked at me, his voice trembling as he said, "Vicky, I know you're still angry with me. Let me apologize to you, okay? I admit, I was busy with work before and neglected you a lot. I promise from now on I'll never disregard your feelings again. I'll never make you angry again. Vicky, let's go home, okay?" Graham's eyes were red as he stepped forward, trying to take my hand, but he missed. I took a few steps back again, dodging him with a look of disgust. I sneered, staring at Graham with loathing as I shook my head. "Graham, do you really need to pretend to be so deeply in love with me? Compared to me, don't you care more about your precious sister? I chose to leave to make way for you and your sister. What, did she dump you? She doesn't want you anymore, so now you remember me, your former free nanny, is that it?" Graham thought I was just being stubborn and angry with him. He sighed and shook his head, explaining, "Vicky, it's really not what you think. The reason you left was because you were still angry with me, right? Now that you're back and I've realized my mistakes, please forgive me, okay? I promise I'll listen to you from now on. And I've already stopped contacting Rebecca. In the future, if you don't like someone, just say the word and I'll delete and block them immediately. We'll never see them again, okay?" Seeing Graham admitting his mistakes one by one, I was at a loss for words. In the past, I had often been angry with Graham because of Rebecca. I felt that Graham should be completely devoted to me, not constantly defending his sister and deliberately ignoring me. Chapter 9. Because of this, I spent countless nights crying myself to sleep. But not only did Graham have no intention of comforting me, he would even say with disgust that I was being unreasonable and deliberately looking for trouble. To this day, I still remember the look of disdain in Graham's eyes. Perhaps he knew that I loved him deeply. Even if he didn't comfort me, I would quickly adjust my mood and throw myself back into our relationship, giving endlessly without expecting anything in return. This time, Graham initially planned the same thing. He was originally very angry, waiting for me to come back and comfort him to solve everything. But as he waited, he suddenly realized that his Victoria might really not be coming back. Now, seeing Graham in front of me, repenting with tears and snot, I found it hilarious. "What took you so long? Did you have to wait until things were irreversible to realize your mistake and try to win me back?" Unfortunately, it was too late. I glanced at Graham faintly, shook my head, and said casually, "Graham, we've already broken up. As for how you handle your relationship with your sister and how you treat the people around you in the future, you don't need to explain it to me because we have nothing to do with each other anymore. Graham, you don't love me at all. You only love yourself. Why do you have to deceive yourself?" Graham was completely stunned. He stared blankly at the woman in front of him, feeling that she looked incredibly unfamiliar. She was not the Victoria he knew at all. "Wendy, let's go." I couldn't be bothered with Graham. I took Wendy's hand and turned to walk out of the airport. Behind me, I could still hear Graham's anxious shouts. "Vicky, wait, listen to my explanation." "Enough, Graham," I suddenly stopped, looked at him coldly and snapped. "Don't let me lose the last shred of good impression I have of you. In my time with Graham, I was the one who gave the most. When Graham wanted to start a business, it was I who took out all my savings to support and encourage him, allowing him to get to where he is today. I worked as his assistant without taking a single cent, even putting my own money in. To help him close deals, I would drink until I was sick without a single complaint. I even ate nothing but bread for half a year to save money to buy him a nice suit. Originally, I thought that once Graham's business took off, we could finally get married. But he seemed to have completely forgotten about his original wife and started to pour his heart and soul into his newly appeared stepsister. If his sister so much as pouted, he would be willing to give her his life. But how did he treat me? With nothing but disdain, disgust, and even deliberate neglect, treating me as if I were invisible. He didn't care about my feelings, nor did he care about my emotions. Whenever a fight broke out, it was always me who had to deal with it on my own. He wouldn't even bother to comfort me, just storming out the door. I had had enough of that miserable life long ago. Today's Victoria is a phoenix reborn from the ashes. I have someone I love, and I have my own warm home. As for Graham, I feel dirty just looking at a person like him. Graham unwillingly chased after me, but I didn't even turn my head, getting straight into a taxi and leaving. No matter how much Graham shouted behind me, I never looked back once. In an instant, a tide of despair washed over his mind. With tears in his eyes, he squatted on the ground, covering his face and crying bitterly. How did things get to this point? Was it because of my repeated neglect of Victoria, or my repeated impatience with her? Or perhaps there was more to it than just that. "Victoria, you really are heartless." Graham's eyes were red. Thinking back on their decades-long relationship, he didn't want to, nor was he willing to, give up just like that. Since Victoria had returned, it meant she was giving him a chance. He had to seize this opportunity and take back what he had lost watching Victoria turn and leave. Graham clenched his fists tightly, his eyes filled with resentful hatred. "Victoria, we've been together for so many years. Do you really mean to just give up on our relationship like that? I don't believe it, and I won't accept it. I will make you change your mind, fall in love with me again, and get back together with me." Dejected, Graham took out his phone and unlocked it. The screen wallpaper was a photo of him and Victoria taken at their university graduation. He and Victoria met in their freshman year. At that time, all the new students wanted to join the student union to gain some experience. As the president of the student union, Graham was not only handsome but also good at sports and dancing, and was very popular with the girls. But most of the girls just sent him gifts and love letters. He didn't even recognize who had sent him what, so it all just faded away. Only Victoria pursued him with the most intensity. To win him over, she would bring him drinks when he played basketball, joined the student union to help him out, and stood downstairs from his dorm every day to confess her feelings. In their freshman year, almost everyone knew that Victoria liked Graham. That photo was taken when Victoria first joined the student union. She had actively sought him out to take a picture with him. He had always kept it on his phone as a wallpaper. Every time he saw this photo, he could recall Victoria's sincere and devoted heart back then. Chapter 10. Victoria's love for him was all-encompassing. To this day, he couldn't recall a single fault of hers, it seemed. He had been so well protected by Victoria that he had gradually started to neglect her, even forgetting that she was also a girl who needed to be loved and protected. But it was all too late. People only learn to cherish things when they've lost them. After leaving with Victoria, Wendy took her to a hotel near her house. After dropping off their luggage, they went to the restaurant downstairs for dinner. As soon as they sat down, Wendy's face filled with anger. "That Graham, he's so shameless. You've already broken up with him, but he's still shamelessly pestering you. He's despicable." Wendy was indignant on Victoria's behalf, but Victoria just shook her head and explained softly, "Let it go, Wendy. I've already moved on. Whatever Graham is doing now has nothing to do with me." When Victoria chose to leave, her heart was already dead to Graham. The fact that she could return here now proved that she had put all the past behind her. What Graham felt for her wasn't love, but a combination of wounded pride and possessiveness. He couldn't accept that the woman who once loved him so deeply, who chased after him and was willing to do anything for him, no longer loved him. Victoria thought back to the man she had worked so hard to win over and how he had treated her. She found it all laughable. In college, she pursued Graham relentlessly. After she won him over, she was almost constantly by his side, afraid that another woman would snatch him away. At that time, their relationship was at its best. Graham had promised her that as soon as they graduated, he would marry her and they would live a comfortable life together. But she never expected that a few months later, his good sister would show up. At first, his sister called them brother and sister-in-law, but at some point, Rebecca stopped. She began to use her status as Graham's sister to make all sorts of demands on Victoria. It was either wanting a handbag or needing help with her homework. At that time, Victoria was so lost in love that she would do everything she could to fulfill any request. Because she felt that Graham's sister was her sister, and they would be family one day, so it was her duty. This continued until she made an even more outrageous request, the one about plagiarizing her artwork. Only later did Victoria find out that Rebecca was not Graham's biological sister. At all, the two-faced Rebecca often secretly competed with her. For example, she would wear the same clothes, put on heavy makeup, and stand in front of Graham asking him who was more beautiful, her or Victoria. And at that time, Graham, who doted on Rebecca, would of course answer without a moment's hesitation that his dear sister was more beautiful. Every time Graham said something like that, Victoria would be very unhappy, but there was nothing she could do. After all, she was Graham's most beloved sister, so she could only force herself to accept it. Graham knew that he owed Victoria a lot and would always coax her with a smile, telling her not to stoop to the level of a little girl. But little girls grow into women before he realized it. Rebecca had become a woman who liked to compete with her for everything. She would use all sorts of methods to secretly lure Graham away from her. When she was sick and needed someone to take care of her, she would take Graham away, saying she was lonely and scared at home alone and needed her dear brother to keep her company. Victoria was a very sensitive girl to begin with. If it weren't for Graham, she wouldn't have had to endure any of this. In other words, in their relationship, Victoria was the one who was always giving, but for so long, not only had Graham failed to understand and care for her, he even began to blatantly ignore her, gradually taking his sister's side and even neglecting her. No matter how much Victoria loved Graham, she would be hurt by this at first. Victoria might have been able to console herself, telling herself that he was the boyfriend she chose, so she had to endure it silently. Later, she began to get jealous and frequently argued with Graham. Every time Victoria got angry with Graham because of Rebecca, it would make Graham think she was being completely unreasonable. Are you crazy? Rebecca is my sister, why would you be jealous of her? Graham looked at Victoria in shock, questioning her incredulously. At first, he would gently coax her, but as time went on, he became more and more annoyed, more and more dissatisfied, and even began to get impatient. Feeling that Victoria was being malicious and deliberately causing trouble, he even thought that Victoria was deliberately looking for trouble with him. Are you bored with your comfortable life? Just looking for trouble? Chapter 11. Let me give you a piece of advice, Victoria. If you still want to be with me, then stop making such a scene over Becca. I've told you many times, she's just my sister. Why is your mind so filthy? These two sentences were what Graham said to me the most. He thought I was being unreasonable, that I was overly sensitive, and that I was just looking for trouble. Every time I got angry because of Rebecca, Graham wouldn't even look at me, just storming out. I don't know how many nights I spent buried in my blankets, crying my eyes out, heartbroken. I could only deal with it myself because I couldn't count on Graham to comfort me. On top of that, Rebecca was always on the sidelines, stirring things up. So their relationship had actually started to crumble long ago. Victoria had given too much in this relationship, been hurt too much, and was long since exhausted and unable to go on. The sparks from every argument had gradually grown into a raging fire. Victoria simply couldn't stand this kind of life anymore. But Victoria had given Graham a chance, and that was this engagement. She had been hoping that Graham would take this opportunity to change his ways. But she never imagined that not only would Graham not change, he would become even more blatant, and worse, he even indulged his sister in choosing a bright red bridesmaid dress, stealing the spotlight from her as the bride. But Graham still felt that there was nothing wrong with what his dear sister did. Deeply hurt, Victoria had already made up her mind to leave everything behind and leave, not giving Graham any more chances. Meanwhile, in a bar, Graham was sitting in a private booth, downing glass after glass of alcohol. The strong smell of alcohol filled the air, but Graham seemed oblivious, just gulping it down. "Vicky, we've been together for so many years. Why would you leave without a word? I won't let you leave me. I will never let go of your hand, Vicky." Silent tears fell one after another. Graham reached out, desperately grabbing at the imaginary hand of Victoria, and said in a trembling voice, "Please don't leave me. I really can't live without you." Unfortunately, Victoria couldn't hear a word he was saying. He clutched his phone, dialing Victoria's number over and over again. On the other end, he was still met with the busy tone of a call that couldn't connect. At 3:30 in the morning, the bar was empty except for Graham, sitting alone in a booth, drunkenly dialing the phone over and over. A staff member preparing to close up saw him and walked over, gently tapping his shoulder. "Sir, could you wake up, please? The bar is closing. Can you call a family member to pick you up, or should I call a taxi for you?" But no matter how the staff member called out, Graham remained lost in his own pain, unable to escape. He clutched his phone in a near breakdown, shouting, "Vicky, I'm begging you, come back to me, please." With no other choice, the staff member took his phone, intending to call the Vicky he was shouting for. Just then, the phone rang. The staff member saw the contact name Sister and was relieved he immediately answered, saying anxiously, "Hello, are you the phone owner's sister?" The moment the call connected, Rebecca was overjoyed since Victoria had left. Graham had cut off all contact with her and hadn't been willing to take her calls for a long time. But before she could be happy for more than a few minutes, the unfamiliar voice on the other end of the line brought her crashing back to reality. I am. Who is this?" The staff member said politely. "Hello, miss, this gentleman is at our bar. He's drunk and unconscious. Could you please come and pick him up? Our bar closes at 3:30, so I'm really sorry, but if it's convenient for you, could you please come over?" Rebecca's breath caught in her throat, drinking himself into a stupor. Could it be that her dear brother was still heartbroken over Victoria? Her heart racing, Rebecca immediately asked for the address. Without even changing her clothes, she drove to the bar and immediately saw the drunken Graham. Heartbroken, Rebecca anxiously walked over to Graham and gently patted his shoulder. "Brother, wake up, brother. It's me, Becca. Let me take you home, okay?" Although Rebecca was petite, perhaps it was the power of love, but she managed to pull Graham up. A dazed Graham lifted his eyes and looked at Rebecca. The person in front of him swayed, and her face gradually merged with Victoria's. He looked at the woman in front of him with delight, his face instantly covered in tears. He grabbed the hand of the person he had been longing for and said in a choked, trembling voice, "Vicky, is that you?" Chapter 12. "You're finally back, you're finally willing to see me. I've been looking for you, waiting for you to come back. You're my fiancé. How could you break up with me?" He cried his heart out, fiercely hugging the person in front of him, shouting in pain. It was as if he was afraid that if he let go, the person in front of him would disappear from his dream. Her brother, who used to dote on her, now mistook her for another woman. Rebecca was extremely hurt, biting her lip with teary eyes as she looked at Graham. She retorted angrily, "Brother, look clearly, I'm Becca, not Victoria. I'm your sister. Why would you abandon your sister for a woman? What's so great about that, Victoria, anyway?" Rebecca pursed her lips, hurt, and slung Graham over her shoulder, walking out of the bar. She got a room nearby and helped Graham onto the bed. Looking at the quietly sleeping Graham on the bed, Rebecca's expression gradually changed from unwillingness to determination. She held Graham's hand tightly and said seriously, "Brother, I like you. I really, really like you. Even though we're brother and sister, we're not related by blood. Even if we get together, no one can say anything. That woman Victoria has already left." "Brother." "No, Graham, you should have moved on from her a long time ago. From now on, I want you to be completely mine, and no one can take you away." Rebecca looked at Graham with affection, and then with a sudden resolve, she took off her clothes and slipped into the bed. Tears fell one after another. Rebecca wiped them away fiercely, her gaze becoming determined. Victoria, you couldn't beat me before. Do you really think that now that you're back, Graham will come running back to you with just a flick of your finger? I'm telling you, it's impossible. Graham is mine and he always will be. And you, Victoria, you will always be my defeated rival. After dinner, Victoria and Wendy returned to the hotel. Perhaps it was the change of environment, but Victoria couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned all night, and when she touched her forehead, she realized she had a fever. Not wanting to bother Wendy, she took a taxi to a nearby clinic for an IV drip. Halfway through the drip, she fell asleep. In her dream, she was back in her first year of college. At that time, Graham was the shining star of the student union, the handsomest and most outstanding upperclassman in everyone's eyes. But Victoria didn't even glance at her, just turning and walking away. If God gave her another chance to live, she would rather have never met Graham. Vicky. After some time, a gentle voice came from beside her ear. Victoria groggily opened her eyes to see Ethan standing in front of her. He was wearing a white t-shirt under a trench coat, and at 6'2", he looked like a handsome and suave hero from a Korean drama. Ethan, what are you doing here? Victoria grabbed Ethan's hand in surprise and touched her forehead in disbelief. I must be delirious from the fever. I must be dreaming. How could you be here in front of me? Ethan smiled, put his suitcase aside, and sat down beside her. I was worried about you, so I postponed all my work and rushed back. I saw the last transaction on your supplementary card was to this clinic, so I took a taxi here right away. What's wrong? You're not feeling well, getting an IV drip all by yourself. Ethan looked at her with concern, touching her forehead. I'm fine, just a bit of a cold. You don't have to worry about me. Victoria smiled and said casually, but Ethan's expression was unusually serious and earnest. Vicky, you're my wife. I won't let you be alone like this. His words deeply moved Victoria. In the past, when she was with Graham, every time she got sick with a fever, she would instinctively call Graham to complain, hoping he would drop everything to be with her. But every time, she was disappointed. Graham would just tell her to take some medicine, that she was an adult and needed to be strong, that he didn't have time to just be with her, that he had his own things to do. But in reality, Graham's things to do were to go shopping and hang out with his dear sister after a while. Victoria gradually developed a habit of not relying on anyone. Even when she was sick, she would be strong on her own and not tell anyone. Because there was no point in telling anyone, they would just tell her to be strong. But after meeting Ethan, she learned that one person could give another a complete sense of security. He was always concerned about her health. Even if she coughed slightly, Ethan would nervously take her to the hospital for a checkup. Chapter 13. Even if he was in a very important meeting or seeing a very important client, he would immediately drop everything to see her. Ethan had told her that she was his wife, the most important woman in his life. So no matter what, he had to take good care of her and never let her suffer any grievance. Marrying Ethan was the most important decision she had ever made in her life. Seeing Ethan suddenly appear before her, Victoria's nose tingled. She immediately threw herself into his arms and burst into tears. Ethan, I missed you so much. Ethan gently hugged Victoria and smiled. Wifey, I won't let you be alone. This was his most heartfelt promise to Victoria. Ethan had actually known Victoria for a long time, but she had never known. Back in college, he had come to Victoria's school as an exchange student. He would often see Victoria reading quietly in the library. Every time, she would sit in the same seat by the window, silently reading a literary journal. To see Victoria, Ethan would come at that time almost every day, specifically to save a seat for her. When he saw her walk into the library, he would quietly get up and leave, secretly watching her sit down before finding a seat close to hers. At that time, Victoria was beautiful, smart, and could dance. Whenever there was a school performance, Victoria would sign up, and he would secretly record her shining on stage. In Ethan's eyes, Victoria was a bright and dazzling star, beautiful but unattainable. Many boys in the school liked Victoria and wanted to pursue her, and Ethan was one of them. But he felt that he needed to be more outstanding to be worthy of Victoria. But he never expected that after Victoria joined the student union, everything changed. She began to pursue Graham relentlessly, and not long after, they were together. That bright and dazzling star ultimately did not belong to him. It was easily plucked by Graham. Knowing he had no chance, Ethan stopped thinking about it and focused on his studies. After the exchange program ended, Ethan returned to his country and got a job at a famous company. Because of his outstanding work, he was promoted from an ordinary employee to the current general manager in less than a year. With a net worth of over $100 million, he was also preparing to start his own business. And now, he was his own boss. Later, by a stroke of luck, Ethan learned that his mother and Victoria's mother were old acquaintances, and he was overjoyed. He began to ask his mother for news about Victoria. When the news of Victoria and Graham's troubled relationship reached Ethan's ears, he was so happy he couldn't sleep for 2 days. He immediately begged his mother to arrange a meeting between him and Victoria. At that time, Victoria didn't even remember who Ethan was. Heartbroken, she was determined to escape the sad city and start a new life. So when her mother mentioned Ethan, she agreed without hesitation. Ethan treasured Victoria. Although she didn't have such deep feelings for him, after they got married, he poured all his efforts into being good to her. Even a heart of stone would be melted by him. Not to mention Victoria, a girl who needed to be loved, quickly accepted Ethan. Now, seeing Ethan travel thousands of miles back to the country just to be with her, Victoria's tears of grievance couldn't be stopped. She threw herself into Ethan's arms and cried loudly, "Oh, Ethan, I missed you so much. I'm so glad you're here." Ethan was overjoyed and content. He chuckled and patted Victoria's shoulder, saying gently, "It's okay, wifey, don't cry. After your drip is finished, I'll take you out to eat." After the IV drip, Ethan held Victoria's hand and got into a taxi. They arrived in the city center and walked side by side down the pedestrian street. Victoria was enthusiastically pointing out which restaurants she had eaten at before and which were scams to be avoided. Just then, a voice of disbelief came from their side. Vicky, Victoria, and Ethan both turned around at the same time. They saw Graham, his eyes bloodshot, staring at them. Chapter 14. "Vicky, I know I was wrong. Please, give me a chance to make it up to you, okay?" Graham said, his tears flowing in panic and helplessness. He wanted to get closer to Victoria, but her eyes, filled with disgust, hurt him so much that he didn't know how to face her. "Shut up, Graham, stop saying things like that. You make me sick." Victoria's face was dark, and her expression towards Graham shifted from anger to cold indifference. She didn't care about Graham at all and didn't want to waste another word on him. She couldn't even be bothered to explain, taking Ethan's arm and turning to leave. Seeing Victoria turn to leave, Graham panicked. Ever since he found out Victoria had returned and mentioned the breakup, he had been so heartbroken he'd drunk himself into a stupor. He had also thought long and hard and decided he didn't want to give up on their relationship, so he decided to fight for it. He quickly walked in front of Victoria, blocking her path. "Vicky, please don't go. I really realize my mistake. Please give me one more chance. From now on, you'll be my top priority, and no one will ever come between us." As he spoke, he reached out again to grab Victoria. Just then, Ethan stepped forward, pulling Victoria into his protective embrace. He glanced coldly at Graham and retorted, "Are you deaf? Victoria told you to get lost. Don't you understand plain English?" Graham was stunned. He looked up at Ethan in disbelief. He was tall and handsome, with a muscular build, and he held Victoria in his arms. Their movements were so intimate, they looked like a couple in love. Seeing this, Graham's eyes filled with panic. He pointed at Ethan in disbelief and stammered, Who are you?" Let go of her. Ethan looked at Graham with contempt and said coldly, "I'm her husband." Ethan Hawthorne. Boom. The word husband was like a knife, stabbing deep into Graham's heart. He gasped in pain, staring at Victoria in utter disbelief. "Vicky, is what he's saying true? Is he really your husband? You're married?" Victoria looked at Graham with disgust, thinking he was just an unreasonable jerk. Not wanting to waste another word on him, Victoria took Ethan's arm and started to leave. But Graham was relentless, continuing to block their path and shouting, "No, I don't believe it. Vicky, we have over a decade of history. I don't believe you've forgotten it all so quickly. Who is he? Is he an actor you hired just to make me angry?" Victoria was speechless. She sneered and retorted, "Graham, are you a little too full of yourself? I've already told you I have nothing to do with you anymore. When I left, I broke up with you. Now, you are you and I am me. What I do has nothing to do with you." Victoria never expected Graham to be so shameless and persistent. Even after Ethan had already said he was her husband, Graham still refused to believe it, clinging to what he wanted to believe. Unwilling to give up, he stepped forward, grabbed Victoria's hand, and shouted angrily, "Stop it, Victoria. I don't believe our relationship has just been forgotten by you like this. Why do we have to break up just because you say so? I'm telling you, Victoria, I haven't agreed, so you're still my girlfriend. I won't let you go. Never." Just then, Ethan suddenly reached out and grabbed Graham's hand tightly. Ethan's strength was immense. With one hand, he squeezed Graham's wrist until it made a cracking sound. Arg. Graham's face instantly turned deathly pale. He gasped for breath, his eyes burning with anger as he stared at Ethan, roaring, let go of me. You bastard," he struggled desperately. But it was useless. Ethan's grip was like an iron clamp, holding Graham's hand so tightly that he couldn't break free. Ethan looked at Graham with a dark expression and said coldly, "As a man, you should know that the most basic courtesy when dealing with a woman is not to shout. My wife has made it very clear to you. Please stop playing dumb and disappear from her sight immediately." Ethan was angry, and the consequences were serious. He had practiced kickboxing since he was young. A weakling like Graham was no match for him. Furious, Ethan pushed him back forcefully. Graham stumbled backward, losing his balance. Ah! A sharp pain shot through him as Graham fell to the ground, his bravado gone. He glared at Ethan in anger. But what he saw made his veins throb with rage. He saw Ethan pull Victoria into his arms and, as if declaring his ownership, kiss her domineeringly. Caught off guard, Victoria's face flushed red with shyness. In her eyes, Ethan had always been a low-key person. He never showed affection in public. This was a first. After the kiss, Victoria looked at Ethan with eyes full of tenderness. She instinctively squeezed his hand, her gaze exceptionally gentle. Chapter 15. In the distance, Graham struggled to his feet. He looked at Victoria, unwilling to give up, and asked, gasping for breath and clenching his teeth, "Victoria, I want you to tell me yourself. Are you really married? Is he really your husband?" His eyes still flickered with disbelief. How could the woman who once loved him so deeply just disappear from his life like this? He didn't believe it. Graham forced himself to suppress his grief and pain, looked at Victoria, and managed a strained smile. You're just lying to me, right? You're still angry with me, so you're deliberately lying, just waiting for me to coax you, right? Tears streamed down Graham's face. Seeing Ethan and Victoria deliberately showing affection in front of him, he was truly panicked. An unprecedented sense of panic and unease consumed his sanity, slowly eating away at his nerves right now. He desperately needed to confirm one thing: was the Victoria in front of him still his Victoria? Ethan shielded Victoria behind him and looked at Graham with a sneer. "Isn't what Vicky told you clear enough? The moment she left this city, she gave up on everything here, including your relationship. A person like you who doesn't know how to cherish others doesn't deserve Vicky's love, nor are you worthy of speaking to her again. As for whether it's true or not, we don't need to explain it to you." Ethan's attitude was firm. He said coldly, "I advise you to stop harassing Vicky in the future. Otherwise, it won't be as simple as just a push next time." Graham was devastated, like a wilted eggplant, instantly deflated. Initially convinced that Victoria was just trying to anger him, Graham began to doubt himself after seeing Ethan's attitude. Could it be? Could what Ethan said be true? When Victoria left, did she really give up on their years-long relationship and no longer care about him? An unprecedented heartache and unease consumed Graham's sanity. All that deep love, had Victoria really just given it up? He looked at Victoria with aggrieved, unwilling eyes and shouted, "Vicky, I don't believe you've really given up. You came back this time to see me, didn't you? I will prove my love for you, Vicky. I won't give up this chance. I will make you understand that in this world, I'm the one who loves you the most." Graham's words were extremely earnest, as if he was truly determined to win Victoria back. Victoria's eyes were filled with disgust. Before she could answer Graham, Ethan stepped forward. He pulled Victoria into his arms possessively and laughed without a care. "Fine, give it a try if you have the guts. Let's see how capable you are of snatching my wife away from me." Although Ethan didn't know what had happened between Victoria and Graham, but Ethan was confident that he could keep Victoria. Although Victoria and he hadn't been married for long, he had this confidence, and he believed even more that Victoria wouldn't leave him for someone like this. Graham was like a clown. No matter how much he jumped around, he couldn't achieve anything. Victoria probably felt dirty even looking at him. Ethan gently took Victoria's hand and said to her, "Let's go, Vicky." "MMM." Victoria nodded, letting Ethan lead her away. After they got in the car, they could vaguely feel Graham's unwilling gaze from behind. Furious, Graham suppressed the resentment in his heart, took out his phone, and called his assistant. "I need you to investigate a man named Ethan Hawthorne in 10 minutes. I want all his information." Graham was anxious, desperate to know what had happened to Victoria during her absence. He didn't notice at all that in a taxi across the street, Rebecca was staring at him with a cold expression. Ever since she had slept with Graham, Rebecca had been clinging to him. There was no blood relation between them. On top of that, after what had happened, their parents, feeling helpless, could only try to matchmake them. Rebecca had been deeply in love with Graham for a long time and naturally hoped to marry him. But Graham was evasive, subtly refusing the suggestion. Rebecca burst into tears, grabbing Graham's hand in frustration and demanding, "Graham, that Victoria doesn't have you in her eyes anymore? Otherwise, why would she just leave and go abroad without a word? She doesn't love you anymore. I'm the one who loves you the most. Why won't you even look at me? Graham, we're not related by blood. Will you marry me? I'm begging you." Rebecca knelt before Graham, humbly pleading with him to spare her a glance. But Graham simply couldn't accept his twisted relationship with Rebecca. "Becca, can you please be rational? We're brother and sister. Even if we're not related by blood, we're still brother and sister in name. If we get married, what will people say about us? Have you thought about that?" But Rebecca didn't care about Graham's words at all. Chapter 16. She looked at Graham with red-rimmed eyes, her voice choked with sobs. "Graham, as long as I can be with you, I don't care what the outside world says about me." Graham froze, staring at Rebecca in disbelief. He still couldn't accept it, shaking his head and explaining nervously, "I'm sorry, Becca. The person I love is Victoria. I can't forget her." Rebecca, who had been looking aggrieved, burst out laughing upon hearing Victoria's name. "Victoria, Victoria, it's always Victoria. There are so many girls in the world. Why do you have to be so fixated on Victoria? She's already left, she's abandoned you. Why are you still thinking about her? Missing her?" Rebecca's world came crashing down. She grabbed Graham's hand and cried out in anguish, "You've already slept with me, are you not going to take responsibility?" Graham gasped. He couldn't remember how he had ended up sleeping with Rebecca at all, so he could only lower his head silently, sigh, and say, "Don't worry, if you have a child, I will be responsible for the child. But I really can't marry you." Hearing Graham's heartless words, Rebecca smiled sadly. She never thought that after all her scheming, her dear brother would be so cruel to her. "Fine, I understand." Rebecca looked utterly hopeless, a deep hatred for Victoria brewing in her heart. It's all that Victoria's fault. A raging fire ignited in Rebecca's heart. She gritted her teeth, wishing she could tear Victoria to pieces. "If Victoria were dead, would you look at me more, brother?" Tears streamed down Rebecca's cheeks, but soon she started to laugh. "Yes, the reason my brother is acting like this is because of that Victoria. If Victoria no longer existed in this world, would my brother like me and marry me?" Rebecca's gaze gradually turned from coldness to hatred. She looked at a photo of Graham and Victoria, suddenly took out a knife, and fiercely stabbed at Victoria's face. "Victoria, you forced me to do this. No one is going to steal my brother from me." When Victoria returned to the city, she was already mentally prepared to run into Graham. But she hadn't expected Graham to be like a homing beacon, constantly appearing in her vicinity. The night before Wendy's wedding, after getting their nails done, they were having dinner at a nearby restaurant. The next second, Graham walked into the same restaurant with his colleagues. Graham just glanced around casually, but his eyes instantly locked onto Victoria. The moment he saw Victoria, his eyes lit up with joy. He was about to walk over and say hello, but then he remembered something and changed his mind. Less than 5 minutes later, a waiter holding a bouquet of flowers walked over to Victoria's table and asked politely, "Ma'am, are you Miss Victoria Williams?" Victoria looked at the waiter in surprise and asked, "I am. Who sent these?" The waiter smiled and explained, "A gentleman named Mr. Graham Grant sent them for you." Graham, it was Graham again. Hearing that familiar name, Victoria felt no surprise or emotion, only a wave of disgust. She frowned at the waiter and said, "I'm sorry, I don't need these flowers. Please return them to the gentleman named Graham." With that, Victoria grabbed Wendy and turned to leave. The waiter had no choice but to return the flowers to Graham in his private room. "Didn't I tell you to give the flowers to Miss Williams at the window table? Why did you bring them back?" The moment Graham saw the waiter, a flash of displeasure crossed his eyes, and he asked sternly. The waiter smiled apologetically and explained, "I'm sorry, Mr. Grant. Miss Williams said she didn't want them and has already left with her friend." "What?" Graham was instantly alarmed. He rushed out, chasing them all the way to the parking lot, and blocked Wendy and Victoria, who were about to drive away. "Ha! Ha! Ha!" Graham panted, blocking the car with his hands, his eyes fixed on Victoria. "Vicky, get out of the car. Let's talk properly, okay?" Victoria looked at Graham with disgust. She was about to open the door and get out when Wendy quickly grabbed her hand. "Vicky, I think it's better not to look at Graham. I'm really afraid he'll do something to hurt you. What would I tell your husband then?" Wendy was speechless at Graham's persistence. He was clinging to her even after she had made things crystal clear. He was acting like a lunatic. "It's okay. Some things have to be said clearly sooner or later." Victoria pushed open the door and got out, looking at Graham calmly. "What do you want?" Her voice, so calm it was almost cold, made Graham shudder, a hint of grievance in his eyes. He looked extremely sad but had to force himself to remain composed. "Vicky, I know I did a lot of wrong things in the past and didn't consider your feelings. I realize my mistakes now. Please, give me a chance to change. Can we start over?" Chapter 17. "I really love you, I can't lose you. Please, Vicky, I really can't live without you." Graham's attitude was incredibly humble, as if he truly loved her to the core and couldn't bear to lose her. Seeing this, Victoria sneered. She shook her head sarcastically. "Graham, stop deceiving yourself, will you? The only reason you're here is because your pride is at stake. You can't stand that I dumped you, that I was the one who chose to end the relationship first." Victoria's accusation made Graham's eyes dart around nervously. He explained anxiously, "That's not it, Vicky. You've really misunderstood me." I never thought that. Graham's explanation was laughable in Victoria's eyes. She shook her head faintly and said coldly, "Stop deceiving yourself, Graham. Do you think I'll believe anything you say? I've given you so many chances over the years. You're the one who didn't cherish them. Only now that you've lost me do you regret it. But I'm telling you, Graham, I'm not a fool you can manipulate. A breakup is a breakup. I'm not playing some ridiculous game with you. I'm married now. Please stop harassing me." As Victoria spoke, she deliberately held up her hand, showing off the diamond ring on her ring finger. Graham was struck as if by lightning, frozen in place. He stumbled back a few steps, shaking his head and stammering, "How could this be? Vicky, how could you leave me and marry someone else?" Victoria looked at Graham with disgust and snapped, "I'm asking you to leave now. Stop blocking our way home. Why are you so inconsiderate?" The familiar words hit Graham like a thunderbolt. He used to say that to Victoria all the time. Every time, it was because of Rebecca. Back then, he thought Rebecca's feelings for him were just simple sisterly affection, so he doted on her endlessly, neglecting his own girlfriend. Every time she got angry with him for being too close to his sister, Graham would impatiently scold her, telling her she was being inconsiderate and just trying to cause trouble. Well, now it was his turn. Victoria wasn't causing trouble anymore. She didn't care about him anymore, and she no longer belonged to him. She was someone else's wife, no longer his fiancée, Victoria. Dejected, Graham stumbled backward, watching Victoria and Wendy's car drive away. He collapsed onto the ground, red-eyed and filled with regret. Soon, it was the day of Wendy's wedding. As Wendy's best friend, Victoria was naturally her maid of honor, there to witness her happiness. Wendy gave her bouquet to Victoria, wishing her happiness. After the wedding, as Victoria was about to leave, she suddenly saw Graham standing at the entrance, staring at her with a fiery gaze. Faced with Graham constantly appearing around her, Victoria finally couldn't take it anymore and exploded. She looked warily at the gaunt, lifeless Graham, who seemed to appear before her like a ghost, and shouted angrily, "Graham, what the hell do you want? How long are you going to keep pestering me? I've told you so many times, why can't you understand what I'm saying? Do you need me to find someone to translate for you?" Faced with such a furious Victoria, Graham's heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife. He felt like he couldn't breathe, looking at Victoria with helpless eyes and saying cautiously, "Vicky, please, please don't misunderstand. I just came to give Wendy a wedding gift and to see you. If you're giving a gift, go find Wendy. As for seeing me, there's no need." "There's nothing to see." Victoria looked at Graham with disgust, snapped at him, and turned to leave. She didn't notice a pair of eyes in the shadows, staring at her with fiery anger. "Victoria, why is it you again?" Rebecca's eyes were filled with malice. She clenched her fists in anger and gritted her teeth. In the car across the street, Rebecca gripped the steering wheel, her eyes filled with disgust. "Victoria, Graham is mine, and he always will be. As long as you disappear, Graham will be mine forever, and no one can take him away." The more Rebecca thought about it, the angrier she got. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, then suddenly slammed on the gas, heading straight for Victoria. "Vicky, look out!" Graham, who had been watching Victoria, saw a car hurtling towards her. He was instantly terrified, his scalp tingling without a second thought. He rushed forward and pushed Victoria out of the way. Bang! A loud crash echoed through the air. Horrified, Rebecca tried to slam on the brakes, but it was too late. The speeding car slammed into Graham, sending him flying. "Brother!" Panicked, Rebecca stomped on the brakes, bringing the car to a halt. Her legs felt like jelly, as if she were walking on cotton. She stumbled towards Graham, collapsing on top of him and wailing. "Brother, why? Why were you so foolish? Why did you rush out like that? Are you okay? Does it hurt? Someone call 911. Devastated, Rebecca cried out in despair, tears streaming down her face. Still in shock, Victoria looked at Graham on the ground in stunned silence. Chapter 18. Graham's eyes were fixed on her. Seeing that she was unharmed, a look of contentment spread across his face. "Vicky, before, I was wrong. This time, I finally got the chance to protect you." Graham was rushed to the hospital with broken bones and severe bleeding. Rebecca was arrested for intentional assault. Upon hearing the news, Ethan immediately dropped everything and rushed to the wedding venue to pick up Victoria. Seeing the shaken and terrified Victoria, Ethan was filled with regret. He pulled her into a tight hug, his eyes filled with remorse. "Vicky, don't be afraid, I'm here." Graham was rushed to the emergency room. Due to massive blood loss, he urgently needed a transfusion. But the hospital's blood bank was low, and his Rh-negative blood type was very hard to find. Graham's life was hanging by a thread. Just as the hospital staff was scrambling, Ethan stepped forward. He found the head surgeon and said immediately, "Doctor, I have Rh-negative blood. Take mine." Victoria looked at Ethan in shock, stunned that he would be willing to donate blood to Graham. Ethan looked at Victoria gently and said softly, "He saved you after all. As your husband, it's my duty to repay that debt." Victoria's heart filled with emotion. She held Ethan's hand tightly, vowing that no matter what happened in the future, she would never let go. Soon, Graham's surgery proceeded smoothly. 3 hours later, the surgery was over. Graham's parents rushed to the hospital. Seeing their unconscious son, they broke down in tears. That vile creature, to think she would do something like intentionally running someone over with a car. Graham's father's eyes were filled with hatred, while his mother stood by, too shocked to speak. Seeing Victoria standing nearby, Graham's father looked at her with apology in his eyes and thanked both her and Ethan. "Thank you both for saving my son, despite everything." "It's all right, sir. It's only natural. Anyone would have helped," Ethan said with a calm smile, not making a big deal of it. Victoria looked deeply at Ethan, feeling incredibly fortunate to have married such a gentle, considerate, and kind man. The hardships in life are finite. If you suffer a lot in the first half of your life, you can enjoy a peaceful second half. Perhaps even fate felt that Victoria had suffered too much during her time with Graham, and that's why it sent such a perfect and outstanding man like Ethan to be her husband. After leaving the hospital, Victoria held Ethan's hand tightly, her eyes filled with admiration and approval. "Mr. Ethan Hawthorne, how can you be so perfect? A man as good as you is impossible to find, even with a lantern." Ethan was a little embarrassed by Victoria's praise. He smiled shyly, squeezed her hand, and said gently, "Really, to be praised by you like this is the most satisfying thing in my life." Victoria asked with a laugh, "Really?" "Of course, it's true." Ethan replied with great seriousness, "Vicky, actually, there's something I've never told you." "What is it?" Seeing Ethan so serious and earnest for once, Victoria asked with a playful smile, "Did you secretly hide some money from me?" Ethan smiled helplessly. No. Come on, I'll take you somewhere. The gentle Ethan took Victoria's hand, and they hailed a taxi straight to Seaview University. It was getting late, but at 9 in the evening, the campus was still lively, filled with laughter and cheerful voices. Victoria looked around and asked in surprise, "Isn't this my university?" "That's right." Ethan nodded with a smile. "This used to be my university too." "Really?" Victoria was surprised, letting Ethan lead her to a tree by the sports field. Ethan reached out, touched a line of words carved into the tree, and looked at Victoria gently. "Can you see what's carved on this tree?" Curious, Victoria leaned in to look. When she saw the words, "Ethan loves Victoria," her cheeks flushed red, and she asked shyly, "When did you carve this? How come I never knew?" Ethan smiled and said, "During my freshman year as an exchange student, the school said we could get credits for planting trees, so I planted this one." Freshman year. Victoria blushed and asked shyly, You liked me back in freshman year?" Ethan nodded, gently taking Victoria's hand. "In my freshman year, the first time I saw you on the cheerleading squad, it was love at first sight. Vicky, at that time, I swore I would win you over. But I never thought that just as I was trying to figure out how to meet you, you were already taken." Chapter 19. I was heartbroken for a long time because of that. The day before I left the country after my exchange studies ended, I even went to the dance team to look for you, but they said you weren't there, so I didn't even get to see you one last time. Every time Ethan thought about it, he would sigh with regret. He held Victoria's hand like a treasure and smiled gently. "But fate was kind to me. It gave me a chance to see you again and made you my wife. Vicky, I will never leave you. I will always be good to you. You are my first love, and the person I cherish and love the most in my life. I will never let you get hurt." Ethan's heartfelt confession moved Victoria to no end. Thank goodness fate had a conscience and didn't let her miss out on Ethan 3 days later. Graham was out of danger and had regained consciousness. He looked around blankly, not quite realizing where he was. His parents were by his side, their eyes filled with tears. Seeing him awake, they rushed forward anxiously. "Son, you're finally awake. How are you feeling? Is there anything uncomfortable?" Graham rubbed his head and shook it gently. "No, how did I get here?" Hearing this, his parents exchanged a glance and shook their heads. "Don't you remember? Your sister hit Victoria with her car, and you pushed her out of the way." The words sent a chill down Graham's spine. He sat up anxiously, grabbing his father's hand and asking in a trembling voice, "Vicky, how is she? Is she okay?" Graham's father sighed and said softly, "The girl is fine. You, on the other hand, have a broken rib and were in a coma for 3 days due to massive blood loss. You just got out of danger. You should rest now. When you're better, you should properly thank Victoria's husband. He's the one who donated blood to you and saved your life." Graham was shocked. He never thought the person who saved him would be him. "By the way, what about Becca?" Graham asked tentatively. After all, Rebecca had intentionally injured someone, so the consequences would be severe if Victoria decided to press charges. She would probably have to spend a few years in prison. Graham's father's eyes reddened slightly. He said softly, "Victoria said that since Becca is still young and doesn't know any better, she won't press charges." Still young, doesn't know any better. That was what Graham used to say to Victoria all the time. Back then, he had always treated Rebecca as a child, spoiling her and loving her, never thinking there was anything wrong with it. Every time Victoria got angry with him because of his sister, Graham would always say, "Becca is still young, don't stoop to her level. She doesn't know any better, do you not know any better either?" At first, Victoria would just sulk, but gradually, he became impatient and even started to avoid talking about his sister with Victoria. Every time he thought about it, Graham wanted to slap himself hard. Now that the boomerang had come back to hit him, Graham finally felt the pain. "So, where's Victoria?" Although Graham was prepared, he couldn't help but ask cautiously. "Victoria and her husband have already gone abroad. They said they won't be coming back." "Husband?" The moment he heard those 2 words, Graham was overcome with despair. But soon, he came to terms with it. He smiled faintly, lowered his head with a look of desolation, and sighed. "Yes, Vicky deserves someone that good. And I've already lost her. I'll never have the chance to win her back." Meanwhile, on the plane, Ethan gently covered Victoria with a blanket and placed a soft kiss on her forehead. "Vicky, you should sleep. I'll wake you up when we get there." Victoria held Ethan's hand tightly, feeling incredibly warm inside. Ethan, Ethan, yes, I'm here. Victoria repeated Ethan's name over and over. With each repetition, she felt her love for him deepen. Ethan, the luckiest thing that ever happened to me in my life was meeting you. Victoria's voice was gentle. She snuggled up in Ethan's arms like a little bird and said softly, I love you. I love you too, wifey. Victoria looked at the man beside her, resting her head on his warm chest, feeling as happy as a little woman curled up in his embrace. As long as she could spend the rest of her life happily with him, all the hardships she had endured in the past no longer mattered.